Two dicks, wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like, that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady
Well,
dead.
not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because, holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Again, after a little bit of a hiatus, last week I was very, very busy with the working world, had no voice. Sterling also kind of needed a little bit of a rest, so we are officially back. And how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. It's that dead zone season anyway, so, having the 2 weeks, that gave us enough time to compile different little bits to come at you guys with a full episode instead of just some of those shorties that we've been doing. But yeah, it's good. Mid-June, we got nice weather. It's gearing up towards training camp. We got mini camps going on last week, so there's football news. There's stuff going on. It's been great.
Yeah, we are, now that all the mini camps are officially done, like we always talk about the NFL and kind of being in that dead zone. We are officially in the dead zone here for the next, I think it's 6 weeks between the last mini camps and the actual start of training camp, because during this time, not a lot happens. It is kind of the crazy point. Like there's always speculation that we can talk about prior to free agency, then the draft, and then we talk about a bunch of the draft stuff, and then all of the rumors that we hear, this, that, and the other thing. But once mini camps stop, it's kind of like, okay, now you're going to start to see some of the things that we've talked about in the past of going like, okay, we're bringing this in. So that's probably going to be, I know we've been teasing it for damn near a month at this point, but you're probably going to see that next week, ultimately, for the all conference or all division teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, for today, we do have a little bit of stuff to talk about. And starting out with the biggest one, this is something that we have been talking about for months, likely going to happen, and that is Aaron Rodgers signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And both of us were very, very much against that idea for the Steelers.
Yep.
And we both kind of knew it was eventually going to happen. And everyone in the NFL, like, we mocked Joy Taylor for basically saying, oh, like, it's the start of, like, a camp, and Aaron Rodgers isn't there, participating with his teammates, and blah, blah, blah. It's going, well, he's not with the team yet, Joy. Like, he hasn't signed a contract. He has no obligation, just like he has no obligation to go with the other 31 teams in the NFL. But now that it's happened, and I would say the NFL's reaction on the Aaron Rodgers signing with it is mostly kind of what our reaction has been. Oh, great. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Steelers. Guess what, everyone? They're going to win 10 games and get blown out in a wild card game for yet another season.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, the longer that went on, the more hopeful I was getting that maybe the Steelers were getting cold feet and going, maybe we don't want to bring him in. So I was hopeful because, like, I saw Nick Wright say it, and I agreed with them where, like, if I was the Steelers, honestly, you ride with Mason Rudolph. You go, this is your team this year. We're going to have a bump year. We're going to trade TJ Watt away, and we're going to try to compile as many draft picks as we can for next year. That is what I would have done with this team. Yep. But instead, they opted to trade for DK Metcalf, move George Pickens out, bring in Aaron Rodgers now, and they're like, we've retooled and we're going to make another Super Bowl run, which likely will not be successful. The only positives I will say about this is it is a very team-friendly deal for the Steelers, which I'm relieved, because early reports way back at the start of free agency was Aaron Rodgers wants 2 to 4 years. Aaron Rodgers wants $100 million guaranteed. And I'm looking at that going, fuck no. You cannot give him that. And the fact that they managed to get him on just a 1-year deal, $13 million, but pretty similar to what they would have signed Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to, really. They probably would have paid those guys more. So, I mean, $13 million plus about $6 million in bonus incentives, which I like the fact that those incentives are not tied to statistics at all. It's purely tied to you are winning us playoff games. You get a bonus for winning the wild card or a bye. You get a bonus for a division round win, a bonus for the conference, and a bonus for the Super Bowl. That is it. And so that I like, because now it basically says, look, you can throw for 4,500 yards and 32 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, but if you lose in the playoffs, you're not getting any of your bonuses. You're coming here to win us a Super Bowl or not. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and I funny enough, I was actually going to bring up the Nick Wright conversation that he ultimately had on his show, and pretty much what he ultimately came out and said was, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, what I would have done is I would have not traded for DK Metcalf. I would have traded away George Pickens. I would have continued to sign Mason Rudolph like we did, not sign Aaron Rodgers, and draft Will Howard. Trade TJ Watt away. Because again, with TJ Watt, you're probably not getting 2 first-round picks for him at this point in his career, but you're still getting a first-round pick. You're still likely getting a 3rd-round pick the year after, so you can stockpile some of these picks. And here's the thing, with that, you are putting your team in a direction. And Nick Wright also went on to state that he goes, listen, Mike Tomlin's teams have always been the defense is going to pick up the slack. Yeah, sure, we got rid of one of the best edge rushers and one of the best defensive players in the game right now. But everyone else, if you want to prove that you're worthy of what this team is supposed to be, we know our offense isn't where it's supposed to be. We traded away our number 1 receiver. We don't have that kind of guy. We don't have a quarterback, and it's going to be if the defense wants to show something. And that's exactly what both of us have been kind of saying, the Steelers. I've been kind of more saying it, just going, you need to pick a direction, because the direction that you continue to go, it hasn't been successful. It's basically like trying to it's basically like going up to a door that says pull and you're pushing it and you're going, how come this isn't working? I'll try again tomorrow. And then the next day you come back and you continue to push the pull door and you're like, oh, this isn't working. And it's basically the same thing with the Steelers. And I know I've been saying for the last 2 years where it's like you need to tank. I don't necessarily think you need to get the 1st overall pick, but if you get a top 5 pick and you get an opportunity at a quarterback, I mean, just look at last year's draft where you had 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12. And the guy that was picked 12th was arguably the 2nd best quarterback to in terms of just pure performance. So
and
you can find that.
For Pittsburgh, even just a top 10 pick at this point, because it's very rare they even get to that point unless they trade up to get it. And yeah, moving out TJ Watt, getting an additional 1st. If you have the 7th pick from your record and then the 16th pick from somebody else, you can package those together and move up into the top 5, possibly even the top 3.
Yeah.
You know, and so that is, as you said, a defined direction for this team finally, instead of, you know, fracturing your leg, putting a splint on it and going, I'm still going to win this 100-meter dash. Sure. Like, no, it's not going to work. But we'll renew it again. I mean, I know, just for myself off air, I know we haven't done it yet and we'll do it after training camp, but I went through the Steelers schedule looking at our roster now going, okay, what's the win-loss going to be? And I managed to get myself somehow to 11 wins, and I was like, I don't think that's right. And so I'm going to have to go back and go through it again, because I was like, that's a hefty win number for this team. I don't think they're going to do that well. I really think 9-8 is the ceiling for this team this year.
Yeah, again, I haven't looked at the schedule, but I've been saying 10 wins. I think that's a fairly fair, reasonable thing. Again, even with TJ Watt still there, we'll definitely talk about that situation with TJ Watt a little bit later in the podcast. But it is a situation of where we've heard this entire discussion for the entire offseason, and now we're just kind of at this point where we're like, Oh, great.
right? And I mean that
Yeah.
this team can't be done yet. If this is what you're doing, if this is the direction you've chosen for this year to build up and make a run, you still need another wide receiver.
Mhm.
This team still needs to make another move.
Yeah.
And whether that is signing one of the free agents that's available or making a trade with somebody else, moving on from a player like an Alex Highsmith or a Nick Herbig to make that deal happen, that's what this team has to do because it's not just going to work with what you have so far. And so I know we saw this week Keenan Allen came out and definitively stated he does not want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has no desire to play alongside Aaron Rodgers. So
Yeah.
that is an out. There are still a couple of guys like Amari Cooper.
Yep.
Gabe Davis visited the Steelers a couple weeks ago and left without a deal, so that one doesn't seem quite as promising. But that could circle back around if no other teams make him offers. Who knows?
There could be a team that
And then,
ultimately cuts a player at the end of training camp, or at the end of
yeah,
at the end of training camp, and just goes, you know what? And the Steelers jump on top of it. Like we see that kind of every year of where
mhm.
a prominent older player ends up being a little bit of like a cap hit, where they're just like, you know what?
It,
Like we have a
yeah,
younger guy that we really like, so we're gonna move on from you type situation, and
but
Steelers might be able to jump on there.
they might. It's going to be an interesting dynamic for the Steelers team this year too. Like we're going into this, and what we have is an offensive coordinator who ran a team that ran the ball the fourth most in the league last season,
Yep.
the fourth most rushing attempts in the league, and you've brought in a quarterback who passed the ball the second most in the entire league last year, and you somehow have to marry these two styles now. I know Arthur Smith came out this week and was like, "Well, we didn't bring Aaron Rodgers in here to run the wishbone offense, and so I'm going to have to make some adjustments," which is promising. He's admitting that he's going to have to make some of those adjustments. I still imagine he's going to call a lot more run plays than pass plays, but at least having a guy like Aaron Rodgers with the football knowledge he does have the ability, like we saw with Russell Wilson last year, to audible those plays,
Yeah.
to get up to the line and go, well, they've stacked the box and I've got DK Metcalf's solo covered on the outside. I'm audibling this to a pass. Simple as that. So I expect to see a lot more of Aaron Rodgers adjusting the plays at the line of scrimmage. If that's not happening, this team's not going to see success because Arthur Smith is still going to be calling toss plays. He's still going to be calling draw plays. He's still going to be calling just ISOs. That's his bread and butter. And with the running back room we have, that makes sense. You're going to want to get the ball in Jalen Warren's hands outside the tackles. You're going to want to give the ball to Caleb Johnson up the middle. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they marry these two play styles and whether it's going to mesh or whether Aaron Rodgers is going to demand the firing of a coach within 3 weeks of the season starting.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting scenario. I thought Arthur Smith should have been let go at the end of last season. I think you also thought
Yeah.
as well. And it's just one of those things of where, I saw a thing that says the Steelers got rid of a cancer in George Pickens to only bring in someone who is more so, who's gotten people
Yeah.
actively fired because of his thoughts. And it's not like, oh, that was 10 years ago. This was last season. And it's not like Arthur Smith has proven over his time calling plays, because this will be his sixth year of being a play caller in the NFL, because he had 2 years in Tennessee. He was 3 years, so that would be
Yep. This
six.
will be year 6 or 7.
Yeah, one of those things. And to be honest, there was only 1 year when that offense actually had success, and that's when Derrick Henry ran for over 2,000 yards, and he had A.J. Brown, and Ryan Tannehill wasn't complete trash for a season. Like,
Yeah.
he just had one of those miracle seasons. I just look at that and go, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence for me with an
No.
offensive play caller. But we've beaten that head over. We've beaten that dead horse so many times. At this point, it's just a pulp. Like, it's
And I plan to continue beating it because that's my team, man.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about them till the end. It's just the way she goes.
Yeah, It's going to be an interesting year for the Steelers because,
It
again,
will.
it's
The,
going to be the exact same things that we did last year. It's going to be looking at it going
yep.
like, okay, there's going to be this, and this. There's going to be some level of improvement with the offense because you are getting Aaron Rodgers. But the question is he going to be able to stay healthy? I know Myles Garrett, when asked about playing Aaron Rodgers, he looked at it and went, yeah, I'm looking forward to putting him in the grave. And it's like,
Yep.
that's one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL, looking at a 41-year-old going, I know that you have been someone that has been able to escape pressure and do this, that, and the other thing,
Hmm.
but you're 41 on a completely repaired Achilles going up against me, who is one of the best defensive players in the entire league. I know you're going up against TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig every single week in practice, but they ain't hitting you, buddy. I'm coming to
Yep.
kill you. I've already tried to kill one Steelers quarterback on that roster. Don't think I won't do it to you too.
Yep. Well, and I've even joked about that with some guys at work. I'm like, I hope Mason Rudolph is ready to start for this team in week 6 because the Steelers play the Browns in week 5. And I have a feeling Myles Garrett is going to get after Aaron Rodgers hard. And that, again, is why the Steelers need to not be done making moves because what they need is guys that can be open inside the hash marks within 5 yards so that
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers has quick outlets. We've got Jalen Warren for that. You need at least one other guy, ideally 2. And that, I think, is why they're looking so strongly at making a move for Jonnu Smith from Miami, because he is one of those tight ends that is often open right over the middle of the line, right in front of the linebackers. And so they want something like that. You also got to get a wide receiver that can be open, maybe outside the hash, outside the numbers, but within that 5-yard mark so you can still just hit him quick when you've got a defensive player bearing down on you. And this offense, they need to find as many weapons like that as they can. They have deep threats. You've got DK Metcalf, you've got Pat Fryermuth, you've got Calvin Austin. All of those guys are good at getting open beyond 15 yards. They need players that can get open within 5.
Yeah, it's there's so many things, and I'm just waiting for the Alan Lazard gets traded to the Steelers, because when that inevitably
Oh, yeah.
happens, it's gonna be hilarious. But
It'll happen.
yeah,
I'm sure it will.
it
But as long as they bring someone else in as well, then so be it. But
yeah, it's one of those things. Again, we'd been talking about Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers for so long. We have already said pretty much everything that there's needed to be said about it. It's just at this point, it finally happened. The last thing that I kind of want to talk about this whole Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers thing is apparently he got married, and I know that I texted you this. Aaron Rodgers is 100% the type of guy to go out there and buy a fake wedding ring to just throw it on his finger. And when people see it at the camp, they go, "Oh, hey, what about that ring on your finger?" "Oh, yeah, I got married. I just didn't tell anyone." It's like, "Oh, did you now? Did
oh,
you?"
great.
Yeah.
Right? The
So
distractions begin already.
yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't really want to talk about it. Like, my personal life is my personal life and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, the dude who has been in nothing but public relationship after public relationship after public relationship all of a sudden gets married in secret. Like,
Yeah.
you and I
But
joked where it was like, it's either one of 3 scenarios. Either he did get married, he found someone that he truly loves, and kind of goes down that path of like, you know what, you're not a celebrity, you're just someone that I met on a retreat, I fell in love with, wanted to get married with immediately, and I'm not really going to talk about it with anyone. 2, there's no marriage, he's still unmarried, and he's just causing havoc. Or 3, he married a dude.
well, not necessarily do, but he married somebody that is going to create a lot of controversy.
Yes.
Is the third one where it's he's saving it for when he has to, it's a jail get out of jail free card. Everybody starts criticizing his play or the team's play or something, then he can be like, "Haha, my wife," and then everybody's like, "Okay, forget about how this team's playing. What the hell, dude?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you married Jeffree Star. Like, what are we doing here?
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the joke I immediately sent because I mean, remember was it before last no, it was before 2 seasons ago where Jeffree Star had come out and said that he was having a high profile relationship with a a well-known, famous, older professional football player. And everybody was joking that it was Tom Brady
Yeah.
because he had just split with Giselle. And as soon as I saw that news about Aaron Rodgers, I was like,
Oh,
it
there it
wasn't
is.
Tom Brady, it was Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hey, and you know what? Love who you want to love. We're both very liberal in that sense. Like, go do your thing.
Hell yeah.
But when it comes to creating distractions, we're both like, okay, like for fuck's sakes. But yeah, it's gonna be funny to just hear, him go on Pat McAfee show and go, oh, what's with the ring there, buddy? It's like, I'm not talking about it. Like, da, 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 da. But yeah,
And honestly, like if this year goes badly enough for Aaron Rodgers with creating drama and turmoil in the locker room, that this ironically could be the thing that starts to cause the rift between him and Pat McAfee, because McAfee is a Steeler for life. Like he is a massive Steelers fan. Always
well,
has been.
Colts. Like Colts are
And
always
well,
gonna
yeah, because he
be.
played for the Colts, but I mean,
He grew up
we
a
see that all the
Steelers
time
fan.
where a guy
Yeah.
plays for a team, he's a fan of that team, but his childhood team that he was a fan of is still
Yeah,
there,
like
and
the
he's been a fan of the
Indianapolis
Steelers.
Colts are always going to be number one for McAfee, but the Steelers
Oh yeah,
reign number two for him because again, being with Pittsburgh, again, one of his co-hosts that he has is basically like his best friend since birth.
yeah.
Like he is like, oh, the massive Steelers
I
guy for
mean,
sure.
yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, like they filmed the show in Pittsburgh too, the Pat McAfee show.
No, that's
If
in
I'm not mistaken,
Indianapolis.
is it in Indy?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, he hasn't left Indy since he retired.
okay, just because
It,
he goes to Pittsburgh a fucking lot, like he is always in Pittsburgh.
yeah, I don't know. I don't really follow McAfee a ton anymore, but yeah, I know it's still all filmed in Pittsburgh, or not Pittsburgh, but Indianapolis or the surrounding Indianapolis area. But yeah, McAfee's always going to be the Colts because that's the team that drafted him. And
Mhm.
but yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But speaking of a former Pittsburgh Steeler that is making his rounds in the news, when I saw an ESPN thing pop up yesterday with the headline Antonio Brown wanted from the police for attempted murder, I just kind of laughed, went, not really shocked here.
Nope. Nope. And the fact that he's still been on social media, like tweeting stuff and posting things, like he posted a bike or something like that, and like I didn't see what all the posts were, but he's essentially trolling at this point while being wanted.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't me. Like yeah, I heard he posted a picture of some white dude, and he was like, "This dude did it, wasn't me."
Yeah, it's
Right? And it's like, come on, man. Because yeah, I saw that too, and I had to look back up and go, "Oh, I thought that's at ESPN, not CTESPN."
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, but yeah, dude is out here wanted for attempted murder and he's just casually going about like we often talk about it every single time when we talk about Antonio Brown, but Vontez Burfict, my God, man, like you just
Ruin that dude's life.
yeah, like
Yeah.
like there's no other way to put it. Like I know I have a slight chuckle there, but some of the stuff that he's just gone on to do, it's laughable at this point. It's like watching
Mhm.
our GTA characters out there in the real world with Antonio
That
Brown.
Yep. And I mean, it's one of the reasons I so greatly dislike the Bengals and love to see them fail. That injury is one of them. They've caused many. Often I always say if the Steelers and Bengals play in the last 2 weeks of the season, neither team is winning the Super Bowl because they're going to injure each other so badly that they just aren't going to succeed.
Yeah, it is without a doubt insane. But and of course, there's always going to be something interesting with Antonio Brown. Speaking of the
This
bang,
Right, like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. A few years ago he was taking his junk out in public pools to show women and be like, look at this. Now he's like, oh, okay, well, sexual assault's not enough. Let's go to attempted murder.
yeah,
I'm not getting the attention anymore. Fucking guy.
people have already seen my penis too many times
Like,
out in public. No
how
one
have
cares
we
anymore.
right? How have we not heard or seen anything about him being involved with Diddy yet?
Yeah, or Epstein, like any
Right?
sort. Yeah, like it's mind-boggling.
I mean, I've never gotten any hint that he was into the children though. He's always seemed to like the big booty white women. So that seems to be his jam.
This is true, but at
Yeah.
like we're starting to approach the period or the time frame with Antonio Brown that we once reached with R. Kelly, and we are 100% at the point now with P. Diddy, of where it's like you could start a rumor that just sounds completely false about any of those three guys, and chances
Yep.
are they've probably done it. Like for years
Right.
and years, it was R. Kelly did this. It's like, did he really? This is R. Kelly we're talking about here. So yeah, he probably did. And now it's like Diddy. It's like, okay, like you could say something about Diddy right now. Chances are he probably did it. And we're getting to that point now with AB where it's like, okay, he's called people crackers on the internet just openly. He has the Cracker Awards for the last 2 years running. He's shown his penis in public not once but multiple times. Now he's done something for attempted murder while still trolling everyone on the internet. We could start a rumor about Antonio Brown today, and I'm sure ESPN would be like, it sounds too plausible to not put this out.
Exactly.
It's
crazy. Like him.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is utterly insane here at the moment. But speaking about the team that ultimately put Antonio Brown into that insane asylum, they're having a lot of drama themselves, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about this Cincinnati Bengals team coming into this offseason basically with 3 goals in mind. Sign your wide receivers to long-term extensions. They did that. Boom. Perfect. Good job, boys. Sign Trey Hendrickson to an extension. It's gone very poorly as of thus far. And then 3, draft all defensive players. Now, they didn't draft all defensive players, but they did have a large, heavy defensive draft. And it's like, okay, that's kind of check mark.
Yeah, I'd give that a check mark because it was a good defensive draft as well.
Yeah.
You know, they got key positions that they needed. But the problem is they can't seem to get these guys to sign contracts.
Yeah, and we'll start with Trey Hendrickson because, again, this whole thing of this Bengals team. This Bengals team, I know when talking with baseball fans and talking about Paul Skeens, if you know anything about Paul Skeens, dating Livy Dunn, so he's already killing it in life, but then is able to throw 105 miles per hour fastball just casually, like it's nothing. Probably arguably one of the top 10 pitchers in the MLB right now, but the problem is he plays for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the dude can pitch 8 scoreless innings, and then his team still manages to lose the game for him. And it's kind of like that talking about with Joe Burrow, where Joe Burrow has a season like he did last year, where if the Bengals make the playoffs, Joe Burrow wins MVP, and it's not even a conversation. And they just wasted that. And the biggest reason was because they had the worst defense we might have ever statistically seen, while also having the sack leader from back-to-back seasons. Again, every team's game plan against the Bengals defense was going, we need to limit Trey as much as humanly possible. And if we do that, life is easy. We can score 45 points because it's the Bengals defense. They have no one else. And Trey still led the league for a back-to-back season with 17 sacks. Like, it's not like it was a year where it's like, oh, the sack leader was 12 sacks this year, guys. Like, no, it was 17. Like, that's still an impressive number. And the Bengals are playing a hardball with the guy. Like, yes, he is 30 years old. He is on the wrong side of 30, and I am always of the opinion that it is really hard to pay guys when they're above 30. It's, with the exception of kickers and quarterbacks, because every other position just gets beat up so badly that it makes it really hard to sign these guys to a long term. But you can still sign Trey to a 3-year deal. That brings him to he's 33, 34 years old. And even if he isn't going to be the best player at that point down that line, you incentivize it to be front heavy as opposed to what you're seeing from their offensive guys where it's back heavy. And you go, okay, if he starts to dip and decline, well, guess what? We've already given him all of his money. And the Bengals are just like, nah, we're just going to really draw this out.
Well, this is the problem with the Bengals organization always.
Yeah.
They put themselves into this place. Had they signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to their extensions a year earlier, they'd be paying significantly less for those guys. Had they signed Trey Hendrickson to his extension last year instead of going, oh, well, do it again, they'd be paying significantly less for him. But they always wait until the very last moment after the market has inflated and inflated and inflated, and then they go, but we don't want to pay him that much. And it's like, well, then you should have paid him last year when you wouldn't have had to pay him this much. And it's what they always do to themselves, and it's why they never seem to be able to keep guys. They did it this year because Joe Burrow was like, if you don't re-sign Chase and Higgins, then I'm done after this contract. I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, we have to do it. But now they're in a boat with Hendrickson where they don't want to afford it. And so now they're being wishy-washy. And I feel like it's playing a big part in these rookies because they're looking at this going, okay, so I'm going to sign a rookie deal for you. I'm going to bust up my body for 4 years, and then you're going to lowball me
Well,
or tag me?
with this whole Trey Hendrickson situation, like before we start to talk about the Shamar Stewart situation, because
Mhm.
it is a very interesting thing, but with Trey Hendrickson, that trickles down to the entire locker room of where you start to then have situations with guys going like, well, look at how long it took for T. Higgins to get the deal with the
Mhm.
Bengals. Look at how long it took Jamar Chase to get the deal with the Bengals. Like the only person it didn't seemingly take that long to get the deal done was Joe Burrow, and that's because the NFL basically went, "Hey Cincy, don't fuck this up," and they went,
Yep.
"Okay, we have one of two. We have the second best quarterback in the NFL right now, and at the time the only confirmed Mahomes killer in the playoffs. So yeah, we'll sign him to a deal. I guess we have to. He's done so much for us." But that trickles down to the team where it's going, man, like there's no security with this team and I'm not going to be able to get my worth. So the biggest problem that you're going to see with every single position is it's not going to be a team game. It's going to be a bunch of players all playing a team game, but for individual reasons, which
Yeah.
makes it's like, hey, I went out there and I got mine. I did my job. So and so didn't do his. I don't really care about that. It's not my problem. Look at what the tape I put on. Like
Mhm.
it puts teams in the wrong sort of idea. Football is a team game at the end of the day. If you don't
Yep.
have all 11 guys on the field at the same point moving as one fluid motion, you are not going to be able to win. There's a reason why the Chiefs were so good. There was a reason why the Patriots for so many years were so good. It was because everyone bought in and there was no individuals. You look at the Steelers, for instance, they're getting those guys that tried to be like, oh, it's me, 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 me out of the room. Talk
Mhm.
about all the receivers that they cut. And it's like, if you're not buying in, well, guess what? Go somewhere else. You're still really, really good, and we would love to keep you, but you're too me oriented. And that's exactly what the Bengals are ultimately shifting towards with this Trey Hendrickson situation. It's basically just saying, we don't care about you. We're not going to pay you. We're going to keep you here if you're too good to lose, and we can't ultimately get a deal done with a trade. But it's absolutely ridiculous with this stuff.
It is, and they're dooming themselves to repeat history, and it, it's why guys often don't go there in free agency, and it's why guys will usually leave after their rookie deals for that exact reason because they know they're not going to get paid their value. And like you said, it becomes this competition between teammates to be like, I'm going to do my job better than you, so I get paid, and you have to find somewhere else to move to. And that's not the way to play this game, and that's an unfortunate thing for Cincinnati, but it's the way it's always been in Cincinnati. And I get it. It's tough for those owners because they are a small market team. I think they are one of the teams with the lowest amount of liquid cash on hand, and so they're one of the ones that has the most difficulty in paying bonuses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you want to win championships, you're gonna have to spend that money. That's what it's gonna come down to. And I said it before. They waited too long to sign T. Higgins. They waited too long to give Chase an extension, and now they've waited too long to give Hendrickson an extension. And the rest of that locker room, outside of those four guys, is looking at this going, man, I'm gonna have to fight to get a contract from these guys after. Why am I gonna break my body for them? I'm just gonna do well enough that another team offers me a contract and I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. And the biggest problem with this is that what they're doing with the contract situation with Shamar Stewart is absolutely disgusting, because it's not Shamar Stewart looking at this going, if you're not paying Trey Hendrickson, why should I do X, Y, and Z? Like he wants to play for the Bengals. He wants to play in the NFL, but they're putting so much insane verbiage in his contract where he's just sitting back going, no, I'm not signing this, because this goes against every other rookie contract that has been signed throughout your organization and throughout the NFL. And he's basically just sitting back saying, I am not being the guinea pig for this experiment. And I'm just trying to read some of the things that have ultimately kind of been put into here. But essentially, what has been the biggest talking point is he can't get injured. He can't he can't have an injury away from team facility. He can't fail a drug test. If he doesn't reach a certain metric over the time period of the contract, in terms of stats and sort of thing, then he also isn't allowed to have any off-field issues, which again, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's basically meaning that every single year of his rookie contract is voidable by the team if he breaks one of these things. And he's sitting back going like, no rookie in the history of the NFL has ever signed a deal like this, and I am not going to be the guinea pig for this experiment. And he went out there and he's like, I'm 100% right on this. Like whatever is going on with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals, it's probably close to being a 50-50 situation from one side or the other. You know, you could say one side is maybe closer to like the 55 to the 45, but there's two sides that just can't come to an agreement here. And with him, he's going, this is completely unjustifiable, because no one in the history of this league has set precedents for the verbiage in the contract. Because again, he's not arguing over money. Every single draft position is slotted with how much they can be given, whether you're the first pick or whether you're Mr. Irrelevant. Like, you are slotted in with how much you can make at that particular spot. All it is the words in your contract. That's all it's been ever since they switched this new rookie contract scale. I think back in 2014 was the first year with this new CBA agreement that allowed rookie contracts to be vastly different. And ever since then, sure, there's been some holdouts over verbiages in contract. I know Roquan Smith basically said to the Bears, I want you to be able to cover any fines that I get from, air quote, illegal hits to the head because of the style of play that he liked to do. And the Bears and Roquan Smith were kind of back and forth on that. And then a week before the season starts, the Bears were like, "Yep, fine, we'll cover it." Like most of the times when you see a little bit of lengthy contract discussions, it's just over words, kind of like that. But what the Bengals are doing is completely fucking insane.
It is, and it surprises me that the NFLPA hasn't stepped in more with this, because it really does feel like a violation of the collective agreement. And I don't blame the guy, because the wording in it is so vague that the Bengals can just at any point just be like, yeah, that thing you did off field, that's considered misconduct, so you're gone. You know, or he could pull a hammy on the field or something, and they could go, well, no, we didn't see that happen on field. It must have happened at home, and so that's on you. You're cut. You're done. You know, and it gives too much power to the organization and basically tells the player that he cannot exist outside the team for the 4 years of his rookie deal.
Yeah, and I'm 100% backing Shamar Stewart with this.
Yeah.
Like, this is completely unjustifiable for what the Bengals are trying to do with this. Again, I wasn't necessarily a massive fan of Shamar Stewart as a prospect. I thought him as an edge rusher, being as athletically gifted as he was an insane thing to have as a talent. But the fact that he only ever had his highest was a sack and a half of production at the college level, while being alongside every single one of his D linemen was drafted in the NFL this year. I don't think anyone went past round 3. So it's not like there wasn't talent around him. Like, he had ample opportunities. But I've also said with Shamar Stewart that if he reaches his peak potential, he's Myles Garrett 2.0. Like, that's exactly what he is. And the Bengals just were able to snag this guy at pick 17.
Yep.
But at this point, I'm looking at him and saying, leave. Like, don't join this organization. Sit out the year and re-enter the 2026 draft. Yeah, you're not going to have all of the guaranteed money that you're going to have at this, because you're going to be a lower draft pick. But you're not going to have to deal with this shit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, it's the type of message that needs to be sent if the Bengals don't smarten up. I'm sure they will readjust as we get into actual training camp and then preseason starts to kick up. They're going to start to panic and go, okay, we'll just go back to a normal contract. Sorry. Because that's what the Bengals do. They hit that panic mode and that panic button, and that's what'll happen. But honestly, like, the disrespect that's been given to Shamar Stewart, I almost wonder if, as we're representative of all the other players, if he should just look at this and go, you know what? Pound sand.
Yeah.
I'm not playing. Even if you change it at this point, with the amount of disrespect you gave me, the amount of grief I had to deal with as a rookie trying to come into this league, I missed OTAs. I missed minicamp, unless he was there. I don't know if
No, he did. He was
actually
at the
attended.
facility, but he didn't participate.
Right? And it's like, so he's missing key points of a rookie season that are vital to the growth and development of young players. And so it's at that point, I'd be like, no, screw you guys. I don't care if I'm a 3rd round pick next year. I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to show you guys how badly you screwed up.
Yeah. And I'm 100% in agreement with that. I do think Stewart should just simply say, even if they come back with the revisement, I'm not signing with you guys. Because
Yep.
look at everything else that we've already talked about here with the Trey Hendrickson situation. Why would I trust this organization 3 years down the line? Let's say I go out there this year and I win offense or defensive rookie of the year with 12 sacks. I go out there and I get better and I get 15 sacks and I'm in the conversation for defensive player of the year. And then in year 3, I ultimately go out there and win defensive player of the year because I'm so talented. How can I trust you guys to sit back and say, oh yeah, we're going to give you the deal that is ultimately worthy that you deserve? And I just look at him and I go, dude, you're going to lose money with
Yep.
this, undoubtedly. Like, it's going to be really unfortunate. But if you end up being a 3rd round pick, and let's just say this year, he says, go pound rocks, I'm not signing for your organization, and he goes and plays in the USFL for that season. And he does that. And people see him just absolutely dominate everyone after not playing for 6 months, essentially, of what could have been his rookie season. Enters the draft. Maybe, just maybe, he ends up being a late 1st rounder instead of an early 1st rounder. Like, again, we've only ever seen this really once with a high profile player, and that was Bo Jackson. And he ended up falling from being the 1st pick all the way until, like, I want to say at the time it was like the 8th round that he ended up getting drafted by the Raiders. But again, I don't think scouts are ultimately going to look at that dude and go, like, his talent isn't there, and end up falling as much as he will or could have been. Like, he
Well,
would
and
fall,
especially
yes,
since,
but
it's been so publicized that it's not like this is a character issue on him where teams are going to look at it and go, well, he didn't want to sign with them. Why would he sign with us? It's very well known that it's, the Bengals are the ones that are trying to undercut him and take advantage of him. And as long as we just give him a basic rookie deal, we're fine.
yeah. I heard someone kind of talking about this a little bit, where they said at some point, do we have to start having that same level of consideration that we used with Dan Schneider, with the Commanders organization,
Mhm.
that we use with the Browns? Because this is just coming to a point of where you're not necessarily causing problems around the league for your own conduct, but you're causing such a problem of where this team should be easily winning the division every single year. Ever since Joe Burrow
Mhm.
joined that organization, they should be competing for Super Bowls every single year. This team should be a dynasty at this point, but the Bengals organization keeps dicking around because of their ownership, and it's just going, at what point do you just say, no, you guys are done, sell the team? Like, you have a calendar year to sell this team, or we are purposely removing this team from the league, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mhm.
Uh,
At
Like,
some point, it is because they're not negotiating in good faith,
yeah,
and that is a problem.
yeah. It's this is something that I always talk about in sports, where I sit back and say, I want to see every team be competitive. I want to see it to be the best, because we all often talk about the NFL being the most entertaining league in sports, not just in North America, but worldwide. And it
Yep.
really is. But there's just simply organizations that just don't care. And the Bengals are one of them. And they lucked into a generational prospect in Joe Burrow, and then lucked in getting his best friend in Jamar Chase, who also happens to be a generational prospect at the wide receiver position. And they've just been able to kind of hightail that one for the last 7 years, while also having a coach that really isn't that good in Zach Taylor. But man, like, it's, I know you hate the Bengals, but like, even you are looking at it going like, man, I want you guys to actually like push us.
Well, yeah, like do right by your fans, do right by your players, do right by the team.
Yeah.
But uh, at this point, like I said though, I would love to see Shamar Stewart say screw you guys, because the other three teams in this division are going to look at that and go, you know what? We're going to take Shamar Stewart in the second round next year, and he's going to play you guys twice a year, and he is going to show you why you screwed up so
They,
badly.
they
Because
might
that
even
that
take
is
him in
the
the first
exact
round.
type of move that the Browns, Steelers, or Ravens would make,
Yeah.
just to prove a point to the Bengals how badly they mishandle the situation.
Yeah, as someone who has been like an outside fan of the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow on the organization, like, it is something where I'm just looking at going like, man, I want Joe Burrow to succeed. I'm a massive fan. He's the only player
Mhm.
that I've ever bought a jersey from that isn't currently on my team in the NFL. That I've never done it to another player. But I'm looking at it going like, man, I kind of hope the Bengals fail, because they're just being an organization, like what you said, in such bad faith. You're like, just burn it down, man. Like, they don't
Mhm.
deserve to go out there and have these players. Like, at this point, trade all of your guys and just disband the franchise.
Yeah,
It's
like
clear that you don't want to be an owner
I
of the
feel
team.
like Joe Burrow is good enough, and I feel like he is going to win a Super Bowl in his career. I don't think it's going to be with the Cincinnati Bengals, though.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have to leave and go elsewhere, and wherever else he lands, then he'll get that fair shot.
it's going to be interesting nonetheless. But next up here on our conversation board is a couple of running backs ultimately ended up signing this week, and both kind of made me a little bit sad that they ultimately didn't sign with my team. But Nick Chubb ultimately goes to the Houston Texans, signs a 1-year deal, and it was J.K. Dobbins ultimately going to the Broncos and signing a 1-year deal. And looking at both, kind of sitting back and like, yeah, both situations kind of make sense for the teams and players, where Nick Chubb goes to an offense where he's not going to be the focal point running back, because again, you still have Joe Mixon there for the Texans,
Mhm.
and that offense is clearly going to need a little bit of help. And if Nick Chubb can prove to everyone that he still is that guy, even after all the injuries that he suffered, he can potentially sign another deal next offseason to be a little bit more of that focal back. And we'll see where it's going. And J.K. Dobbins, again, while he was utilized with the Chargers, they didn't see that he was enough. and they ultimately replaced him with Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton. Goes over to the Broncos. He's going to kind of be in that running back by committee there, and that's a fairly solid spot for him as well.
It is, and I mean, of those two signings, I think the Broncos got away with the better deal here because you've got Sean Payton and coach. Bo Nix had a great year last year for a young quarterback,
Yeah,
and there's no reason to believe he's not just going to continue to improve. And adding a dynamic playmaker like J.K. Dobbins, where you're going to be able to utilize him out of the backfield a lot, that is a big boon for this team. And adding someone like that, it's going to take a lot of pressure off Bo Nix and make it easier for him to perform and excel. Whereas with Nick Chubb to the Texans, I'm a little more concerned for Nick Chubb at this point
yeah.
because of the bad injuries that he's had and the fact that this team was like, yeah, our running back got hurt last year and our quarterback was the second most sacked in the league, and the
We
way
did
we're going to
nothing to
fix that
improve
is
the
by
offensive
trading
line.
away the best part of that offensive line, letting the second best part walk, and then just, let guys maybe figure it out. So this O line has gotten worse, which makes me think that we might see a CJ Stroud injury this year. This O line is going to be so bad, and Joe Mixon had a rough time. Nick Chubb, I worry for Nick Chubb's health. I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot of beat up playmakers in the backfield for the Texans this year because their O line is kind of patchwork and kind of rookie.
Yeah, I went into the draft process with the Texans saying if you use all three of your first draft picks on offensive line, you're still going to have some struggles as all the three of these guys start to get used to things, but at least you're going to be putting yourself in a somewhat of a better situation than what you currently had.
Mm-hmm.
They drafted an offensive lineman in the first round. Good check mark. Then they decided to go back to back Iowa State wide receivers, baby. And you kind of look at it and go, playmakers are good. Everyone loves more playmakers. I think if you can get more wide receivers to catch the football, the better. But you also need your quarterback to be alive and throw the
Yeah.
football. And we already saw CJ Stroud struggle this last season because he was on his ass so much to the point where people are like, is he that generational prospect that we thought he was after his rookie season? And it's going to be interesting to watch this Texans season nonetheless. And speaking of another wide receiver, we have some Terry McLaurin trade rumors going about. I don't know if he's officially requested a trade from the Commanders. I don't think I've seen that yet, but I know there's been a lot of rumors. Again, he wants a brand new deal with the Commanders. I will say with this one, this does have more of a feeling of it's going to get worked out, but it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be a little bit of frustration, but then once we start right before training camp, it's going to be, oh, hey, the Washington Commanders have signed Terry McLaurin to a blank deal, just
Mm-hmm.
insert deal here. But yeah, needless to say, it's been interesting to listen to some of the trade conversations that come around with this.
Well, and it feels like there might be something more going on behind the scenes because Terry McLaurin has been with this team for years
Yep.
and hasn't had this problem at any point where he's been like, I want out, because from what I heard, it was essentially, I want an extension or I want you to move me,
Yeah.
is what he's essentially said to them. And it's just a strange time for it considering they just got a good, dynamic young quarterback. It makes me wonder if perhaps there was just a disconnect between McLaurin and Jaden Daniels where they're not on the same page, they had a disagreement about something, or it just and we saw it on the field too. There were several times where Jaden Daniels is just he's missing Terry McLaurin and Terry's open. And that's frustrating for a high level wide receiver when you're getting open and you've got a quarterback that's supposed to be elite and young and he's missing you. And so it makes me wonder if there's something else going behind the scenes where Terry's like, I can't play with this guy. We don't mesh well, we don't connect. I mean, for me looking at it, I'd be like, okay, the two of you are going on a retreat together, away from Aaron Rodgers, no ayahuasca. Just go and throw the football for 6 weeks together.
Yep.
Bond, something. Because that's what it feels like to me. I just get this vibe that it's a disconnect between quarterback and receiver where they're just not clicking, and Terry McLaurin isn't liking it because he's at a point now where he really is. He's probably got one big contract left in his career,
Yes. Like,
and
this
he's
is his
looking at
big
it going,
contract.
I don't think I'm going to succeed at getting that, catching the ball from Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from in that one, but to me, I sit back and I don't necessarily understand why Terry McLaurin would want to go, even if there is some of that little bit of a disconnect between wide receiver and quarterback, because that can still always be built upon in year number two. And it's not like they've had to change the offensive system. They still have their offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. Jaden Daniels was the clear offensive rookie of the year last year. He looked so good last year that people are betting for him to be the favorite to be MVP this next season, which I think is ultimately asinine. But you have this team that had the second overall pick for a reason the year prior to, and then went all the way to the NFC Championship game, and looks like they've just gotten that much better of a roster here now, and is trying to take that next step to ultimately compete with the Eagles. And I don't understand why he would want to leave that situation. Now, granted, he needs to be paid. He's a very, very talented receiver. Top 10 in the NFL without a doubt. Scary Terry for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But I also continue to sit back and I go, if he wants out, I feel like that would be a mistake for him, because where would he go that would have necessarily a better situation? Because at this point in the season, if he gets traded, he's going to have to learn the new playbook. He's going to have to learn the new quarterback. Because again, I know there's been some conversations of like the Patriots being a team that's looking very heavily at him. I go, yeah, that would be a good spot or a good thing for the Patriots to do, get Drake May some weapons. But I also look at it and go, is Drake May as good of a quarterback as Jaden Daniels is? Is that going to be the big difference? And if you're also the Commanders, why in hell would you trade Terry McLaurin away?
Right?
Like
Unless you're getting a significant haul back. That's the only way you're going to do it.
well, even if you get offered 3 first-round picks for Terry McLaurin, I still say you turn that down, because in the NFL, what do we know as the biggest help for a young quarterback? It's talented wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Can we name another wide receiver on the Commanders that's not named Terry McLaurin?
Well, Deebo Samuel.
Okay, Deebo Samuel is one Popeye's biscuit away from being a slow tight end at this point.
Right? Yeah.
But
Yeah, and other than that, I think their next up would be Noah Brown.
yeah, I'm gonna be taking a quick look at this, just because like we often talk about with these young quarterbacks, getting them as much help as
Mm-hmm.
humanly possible. Again, the Bears this year, they did not need to draft a tight end or a wide receiver, but the Bears ultimately drafted because they said we can't have enough playmakers. And
Yep.
you look at the Broncos, they added playmakers. You look at the Patriots, they added players. You just don't often see them sending guys out. It would be like the Bears this year saying, we're not going to draft a wide receiver or a tight end, but we're trading away DJ Moore. Know what I mean? Like, it kind of has that
Yeah.
same feeling. But just looking at the wide receivers on this one, Noah Brown, Lawrence Cager, Michael Gallup, ooh, fancy. Jacoby Jones, Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, Terry McLaurin, Chris Moore, CJ Osborne, Deebo Samuel. Again, just not a lot of much here. I know Luke McCaffrey had somewhat of a halfway decent year last year. Okay, never mind. He had 168 yards. So but yeah, I'm just kind of looking at this going, if you trade away Terry McLaurin as the Commanders, sure, you have Deebo Samuel, but we've all seen the clips of Deebo Samuel. Like, dude, and again, he's not also a young receiver either.
No,
Like, you're supposed to have
no,
these two guys play together and be a really fearsome tandem.
yeah, and I mean, I am on the same page as you here. Like, you're crazy to move on from a guy like Terry McLaurin. Give him the extension is what the Commanders need to do.
Yeah.
Luckily this is a new ownership group, so odds are they will do that. If this was the old ownership group, I feel like Terry already would have been traded because of this.
Yep.
Because it was the kind of dumb moves that they made.
Uh-huh.
Because going somewhere else for Terry McLaurin is probably best situation because he could go somewhere where he's got either a more talented quarterback or a more talented supporting cast. Because he's got to be looking at it going, great, you guys brought in Debo Samuel. He's gonna remove some of the pressure off of me so I don't have to be double covered him. And so I see where the frustration would be on Terry's side of it, because him looking at it, he could be like, trade me to the Chargers. I'll go catch passes from Justin Herbert. At this point, to trade me to the Steelers. I'll go be a number 2 beside DK Metcalf, catching from Aaron Rodgers. Trade me to the Texans. CJ Stroud was great when he had someone like Stephon Diggs. Imagine what I can do with not being as big of a problem as him. Like there's lots of options out there for Terry McLaurin. It's just none of those teams are going to offer enough where it makes sense for the Commanders to do it. So really, while he's on this rookie deal in Jaden Daniels, why not pay that money to
Yep.
Terry McLaurin? Unless a team comes out and offers you 2 bona fide starters at defensive positions where you are severely lacking, as well as a draft pick, then I can understand it. Because, yeah, you said not for 3 firsts, because it is. 3 firsts is a gamble. But, using my team as an example, if you go and you go, okay, well, here is Alex Highsmith and I don't know, Peyton Wilson, or Pat Freiermuth, as well as a 2nd-round pick or a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah.
Then you look at that and you go, okay, well, yeah, we're losing Terry, but we got an edge rusher, a number 1 edge rusher finally. We got a number 1 tight end who's going to be way better than Zach Ertz. Like, those I could understand, but you're not going to get deal offers like that from anybody. Those are unrealistic. Those are fantasy deals. Those are Madden trades. Like, it's not going to happen. That is the only way you're going to get a deal done for Terry McLaurin, is if somehow there's a 17-year-old that's making those decisions for a team. Like, it's not going to happen. So just give him the extension. Give him a 3-year deal. Give him $35 million. Done.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, this should be an absolute no brainer for the Commanders, and if they somehow manage to screw this up, it's gonna be hilarious, because it'll be the last kind of breath of Dan Schneider still in that organization, or the ghost of Dan Schneider going, ooh, trade Terry McLaurin, it'll be good for your franchise, promise, fam. But
right, yeah, I don't think it'll happen unless it ends up being some other team that's looking to just shake up their wide receiver room. The Broncos come to mind.
yep.
Maybe it's a swap for Cortland Sutton as well as a 2nd round or something like that. So then it's a slight downgrade for Washington, but they still have a number 1.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it would have to be something like that.
Exactly.
We do have a new segment that we're going to be adding weekly to the show. It's what's more likely, and so every single week we'll be asking each other what is more likely, basically giving ourselves scenarios to kind of ultimately sit back and talk about. It's either going to be 2 to 4 questions asked from each of us going to each other. Typically it's going to be about a minute to a minute and a half trying to answer some of these sort of questions. But Sterling, I'll let you kick things off, buddy.
Well, first up, I've got for you is a Cleveland Browns. Shadur Sanders. What's more likely? Does he stay and play for the Cleveland Browns, or do we see him as a backup for another team at the start of the NFL season?
This is a really interesting question, because you can see it, or at least I can see it either way, because Shador Sanders, as I don't think he was a high-level quarterback prospect in this year's class. He was still my 2nd quarterback in this year's draft class off of pure talent. And I think the Browns do need him to be there. I think he's better than Dylan Gabriel. I think he's better than Kenny Pickett. And I think if he learns from Joe Flacco, that'll ultimately be a good thing for him moving forward. But ultimately, I could see the Cleveland Browns just easily saying, we don't really want the hassle with you, and we're going to cut you at the end of training camp, and he's going to end up being a backup somewhere. Ultimately, I think what's more likely to happen is he ultimately does get cut and he becomes a backup for another team for a season, just because this is the Cleveland Browns that we're talking about here. They almost kind of got forced into making that pick by their owner. It felt like
Yes.
the coaching staff and the general managing or the management staff. So ultimately, I do think Shedeur Sanders won't be on the Cleveland Browns moving forward. I think he will be a backup for a team, and it's going to be an interesting ride for him.
Yeah, and that's where my thought process on it was going as well. Looking at OTAs and minicamp, it was very clear that Joe Flacco was the best quarterback on that team,
Yep.
and it was very obvious that Kenny Pickett was the worst. But out of those two rookies, Dylan Gabriel significantly outperformed Shedeur Sanders according to all coaching metrics that the Browns have released, which makes me think they're going to roll with Gabriel instead. And I think we see Shedeur Sanders, and likely landing spots that I see is Colts,
Yep,
ultimately.
it'll be a really interesting scenario where he will land, because I could very easily see a team with a little bit of an older quarterback, for instance, like Rams with Matthew Stafford, where it's going,
Mhm.
hey, kid, we're gonna bring you in, learn from Matthew Stafford for a year,
Yep.
we'll go into next off season. We'll see if you can be the guy for a full season after that, while you're gotten this kind of doctorates in Sean McVay and learning it from Matthew Stafford. And if you're the guy, then we're gonna roll with you. If not, well, then we'll
Yep.
just move on.
Exactly. Raiders are another one I could see happening. But yeah, I don't think Shedeur Sanders will be with the Browns when we enter week one.
So my question for you is, who is going to have a better year 3 as a quarterback? Is it going to be Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers and his improvement with both the offensive line and the receivers, or is CJ Stroud going to get back a little bit more to form?
I actually think it's going to be Bryce Young. We saw at the end of the year last year after that benching, Bryce Young went on a bit of a heater. He was performing better with less talent around him. They went out and they got a better wide receiver than Leggett this year. They improved their offensive line to give Bryce Young some more protection. I still don't think Bryce Young is elite, but the fact that the Panthers improved the team in front of Bryce Young, whereas the Texans sort of took a step backwards on the team that's in front of CJ Stroud. They lost some offensive weapons, they lost protection. I think CJ Stroud struggles this year. I'm not even sure that CJ Stroud finishes this season healthy. So I do think Bryce Young is going to have the better year 3 over CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I think ultimately with these two, they're probably going to have very similar years, because I do think CJ Stroud is vastly the better quarterback. And while Bryce Young did have improvement from last year after his benching, I still am not fully convinced with everything. And yes, you did get the air quotes best receiver in the draft this year. I still had questions about McMillan. And so I'll need to see it. But again, that offensive line worries the hell out of me with that Texans team. But
Yeah.
if they get top 20 offensive line play, with all the weapons that are there, with Nico Collins, with the 2 draft picks that they ended up with, the wide receiver spot, the running back room is going to be really hard to deal with. Their tight ends are going to be tricky. And if they have improvement from the offensive coordinator call or from the offensive play caller perspective, I think CJ Stroud will easily go up with that. But that offensive line worries me enough to the point where I'll say I'm pretty sure they'll be even.
Yeah. Yeah. My next one for you is my team, and it's TJ Watt. We know he's holding out on his contract, and so what's more likely? Does he get his contract extension and play week one, or does he sit out and hold out?
I think with TJ at this point in his career and where he's been with the Steelers, I think he's going to look at them and say, listen, I loved this, or I love this organization. I love playing for this organization. I am going to play no matter what. I'm probably not going to participate throughout training camp without any of the contract stuff done. But once week 1 ultimately comes by, there's no point in me sitting down, and I'm going to go out there and play. If we can't get a deal done at the end of the year, then I guess I'm gone. And so that's kind of your problem. I think it's more or less going to be a situation of this is the date where if we don't have a deal done, I'm going to continue to play and join with the team and organization, but I'm not going to be signing a contract extension with you, and I'm going to be testing free agency next year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he plays either way, but ultimately I do think the Steelers will get a deal done probably before preseason, if not before training camp. Since that Aaron Rodgers deal is done now, they know they've got the cap space for him. That was the big concern.
Yes.
We give too much to Aaron Rodgers, we can't afford TJ Watt. Now they can afford TJ.
This is very much in the similar line with you with this last question, and it also involves TJ Watt. And it's, what is more likely, that the Steelers give him a long-term extension or TJ Watt gets traded?
They give him a long-term extension is the more likely of the two.
I think it is more likely that they ultimately give him an extension, but I am not ruling out the idea that he gets traded. This sort of situation reminds me of what happened with Khalil Mack when he was with the Raiders and got traded. No one thought that he would ever be traded at some point, and around this time of the year, that's when we started to hear some of the cracks of going like, okay, maybe the Raiders might explore some trade options. And then once training camp started, we started to see those heat up more and more and more. And then the week prior to going to the season, ultimately things just kicked off into turbo mode and he got traded.
Yeah, and that being said, if they do not have an extension in place by the start of preseason, I do think TJ Watt gets traded by the deadline. If we get into regular season with him not on an extended deal, he will be traded by the deadline.
Perfect. And this is going to be a little bit of a segment that we have every single week. We'll kind of slot it in when we feel it is appropriate. This is kind of where we felt that it was most appropriate for this week. But that is all for this week, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan, saying peace.